Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I did it again. I paid for a Patreon episode of something that I would never normally pay to watch on the show and talk about, because it's very much an issue that's dividing the left right now. So pretty much what happened is Jimmy Dore has come up with the interesting idea. Jimmy Dore, of course, being a leftist YouTuber, comedian, boomer, resident boomer around the area, one of the people deemed too controversial for the Young Turks Network. He is out there, and he pretty much has been getting all of his fans, and some of them are pretty well known, including an NFL player, Justin Jackson, to lobby people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to condition their vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House on a couple of three things. Actually, it's just one, that they guarantee a floor vote for Medicare For All, which is pretty much, very much likely fail. And my question is, what is the point? We're going to see if we can get through that by checking out a debate with Jimmy Dore and David Sirota of the Bernie Sanders campaign. It's a very, very special and exciting, new, and very rare kind of news-free reaction episode, because we're going to be discussing this. And we'll start by reading David Sirota's article. It's News Flash 458. We're having a left strategy session, everybody. All right. We are getting into it today, and did unfortunately have to rebroadcast this because I forgot to turn on the sound for the whole door thing. The part that was playing the interview, which was a little bit annoying. But we did start by reading a little bit of David Sirota's article. This is going to be brought up. 5 things House progressives can do to advance Medicare for All. So, and he does kind of take a little bit of shot here at Jimmy Dore, saying, "Oh, if you want to get in some sense, the proclivity is understandable to like this kind of a shallow spectacle that he's thinking of at this Medicare for All floor vote." This is Sirota speaking of Dore here. "Our short attention span, social media culture disproportionately rewards spectacles rather than the unglamorous wielding of power. For instance, it's easier to do a YouTube rant and get a lot of retweets about a high-profile floor vote than it is to get everyone excited about the much harder organizing work of getting esoteric HHS waivers or removing a relatively obscure committee chairman who is blocking progress. Of course, these spectacles can be important. They can be critical organizing tools, but the performance gestures on their own are not enough." And this pretty much is I think, a great way of putting it, and it's kind of silly. Like the idea of a Medicare for All floor vote is really kind of silly. They could there's some suggestions here, because I mean, if you look at it, like we'll get to Sirota's alternative suggestions for Medicare for All in a moment, but just like the other like alternative possibility of like things you could do here, like condition a vote. Like my personal preference here would be to pass the PRO Act in the House and like lobby Joe Biden, try and convince Joe Biden in this to fight for it in the Senate, because of course we don't know what's going to happen with the Senate. If it's the Senate, then I say push for the Senate as well. I think it's just passing some sort of pro-union legislation that also, by the way, builds the tools, builds the on-the-ground networks of people who are politically engaged, and pushing the way for more democratic unions, that leading the way for them to be more left-wing, and kind of building that groundwork, building that organizing groundwork, so when the time comes for a politically viable, electorally viable climate for Medicare for All, then that can easily happen, or not easily happen, but a lot more easy. That is the goal. I think that would make a lot more sense than just pushing for this floor vote right now, because the big thing about Jimmy Dore kind of being in kind of the boomer lens of things is, well, like he doesn't really get, he's just kind of out of and really just looks past like the whole principle of just organizing on the ground, building these like coalitions, supporting labor unions, big way to do that. And kind of the way that electoral organizing or electoralism, can kind of like have its limits. Electoral politics can have its limits, and maybe you can do a little bit of both. And in some situations, like this one, it may be better to push for something like the outside strategy. The inside-outside strategy may need a little bit of outside, I think, this emphasis. It's not the time for inside, because so many people's strategy just says, oh, we can primary them all. Like, we see people like Kyle Kalinske out there on Twitter being like, well, the optics are so bad, and we'll know who to primary. Like, I'm sorry. Have you seen who these people are? Like, optics doesn't matter. Optics does not matter anymore. Like, literally what's going to happen is, if this vote does happen, it'll almost certainly fail. And sure, people will know who's against it, but we have to build the power, because people, especially in the current media climate, are just going to not look. They're not going to look at something and be like, oh, Medicare for All, you voted against that on a House floor vote. Like, that is just that is disgraceful. I can never vote for you again, even though you did it in the middle of the pandemic and all. It's completely illogical. Like, people, I don't think people's support is that like it's just clearly not that well conditioned to associate with politicians. Like, I'm sorry, it would be nice to believe, but I think what would be more productive at this current time and the really urgent fight for Medicare for All is organize people around it on the ground, like political basis of support, and that's how really building independent structures is how you push the Democratic Party to the left, I think. Also, primary challenge wherever and whenever you can, but also do it in concert with people who can all of a sudden show up, organize, and maybe withhold their labor until Medicare for All is passed. And healthcare can be taken off the bargaining table for unions. That's the big incentive behind Medicare for All. So some of Sorota's more Medicare for All-based suggestions are: remove the Medicare for All opponent who chairs the key committee. 2, schedule a vote on existing, and that's Richard Neal in the Ways and Means Committee. 2 is schedule a vote on existing legislation that lets states create single-payer healthcare systems. Number 3 is schedule a vote on a resolution demanding Biden use executive authority to expand Medicare. So the American Prospectus reported that thanks to provisions in the Affordable Care Act, President Joe Biden will have unilateral executive authority to expand Medicare coverage during the pandemic. The House can pass this resolution demanding he immediately takes this action. And this should be really kind of a pretty easy thing to do. Include provisions in year-end spending bills that create a presidential commission charged with crafting Medicare for All. And finally, author a discharge position to force a vote on Medicare for All. So, and kind of about that resolution there, like it's going to be tough because Biden, this is the thing about Biden, this is why he sucks so much, is he spent most of his career trying to cut these programs.
Harder organizing work of getting esoteric HHS waivers.
So this is, again, Dore reading the article, and then Sirota going to come in and respond.
Or removing a relatively obscure committee chairman who is blocking progress. So, David, go ahead, do one of those rants on YouTube that are easy, and then we'll retweet it and get a high profile for it. So, are you saying, I hear what you're saying. Are you saying that we should actually ask for more than a vote on Medicare for All, or that we should ask for this instead of that?
No, I think you have to ask for more and understand what the minimum that you would take would actually be.
Okay.
I think that asking for a floor vote on Medicare for All is kind of like the absolute least they should be asking for. It should be arguably the crumb that you should, if you ask for the whole loaf, maybe you accept the crumb.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Like, he is preconditioning. The idea of preconditioning support for Pelosi is a great idea. It's probably something they never would have done in the first place if there hadn't been people out there asking for it. And that's why building independent power structures, no matter who's elected, is so important. But the thing is, overall, like, it's really hard to get that. It really is. And you really got to do it, I think, for something worth having
at the end of the negotiating process. So I don't think it's enough of an opening bid. I think it's like, look, here's an entire set of demands that we have. which ones of these are you going to give us? Maybe you're not going to give us all of them, but you've got to give us at least some of them. That's my point. And I guess my additional point is that the most substantive demands should be the demands that can actually, I think, move the possibility of actually enacting Medicare for All forward.
Yes.
I think that if they got rid of, for instance, if they got rid of Richie Neal of the Ways and Means Committee chair, I think if they got rid of him, that would actually move the ball forward a lot more than a floor vote, essentially predetermined floor vote on the House floor. Not to say that that wouldn't be a useful organizing tool.
Okay. So I'm actually thinking small ball is what you're saying. Is that we should be?
I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I'm not criticizing you for it. I'm just saying I think that, like, we have to be willing to ask for and respect the audience's potential to be engaged in things that aren't as spectacular, but things that can be actually just as fruitful, if not more fruitful. So I think essentially this requires a bigger public education campaign to let people know how these things are actually going to happen. I mean, the state waiver thing, to me, if I had to name one thing that the Democrats really could do that really could advance the entire movement for Medicare for All, it would be to say that Javier Becerra is coming in as HHS secretary. He says he supports state-based efforts to do Medicare for All. There was a state-based set of initiatives in California in the assembly to try to do Medicare for All, and they threw up the idea that you can't do it because we can't get HHS waivers. So here you have a guy who's going to become the HHS secretary who already has almost all of the unilateral authority he needs to.
You can't really do that through Pelosi, though,
and can be empowered even more.
It's got to be something Pelosi herself
make
can
that
do.
happen is something eminently doable, and I think a lot of the public doesn't even know about it.
All these ideas are great ideas.
Okay, I hear we've covered Becerra on this. Yes, he was for Medicare for All. He's hinted he was, but then when he got into a position of power inside the party, he stopped. He stopped co-sponsoring Medicare for All, I think, in 2015 or something like that.
And that's really not surprising.
Again, he's going to be that would be great.
Well, in 2017, he went on Fox News and he said, I have been a supporter of Medicare for All for 24 years in Congress. And then he was specifically asked about the state issue. Do you support states being able to do this?
Serrato
and he said,
the numbers
absolutely.
there.
So here's a person who's going to, I mean, assuming he gets confirmed, is going to be in a position of power to actually do this. And I think a lot of people don't know even necessarily the kind of power that he actually will have to do this. So that's the kind of thing. And I want to be clear. There's an argument maybe states can't do it. Maybe it would be difficult for them to do it. We need a national plan. I think in terms of the movement for Medicare for All, actually engaging states is actually part of a grassroots movement in this way. You would then be empowering state legislators in their community to campaign in a real way for a real Medicare for All program in their state, which is a form of political engagement. Ultimately, to get this at the national level, you're going to need the kind of mass political engagement that kind of exercise would help create.
So I get, this is such a tough needle to thread here, but I agree with what you're saying.
And you're actually completely he's hitting my points about the mass engagement too. I love this. I swear I did not watch this beforehand. I'm playing this. I'm hearing this for the first time. And I do want to give a shout out to James Weld, who sent in a comment. It's unfortunate, but I agree that we're not going to have a Medicare for All. We're not going to have to approach Medicare for All on not just a national level scale, but a state scale too. Yeah, and maybe doing those kind of things in California could be very what David Serrato mentioned there could be very, very helpful in proving as a possible test case that something could work. Especially in the early phases, as we've done with same-sex marriage, getting those and proving those that those could work. But I also think it's really important that we have, some sort of force on the ground, some sort of outside power structure. I think that really does come through. The best way is labor unions because they really have kind of a bargaining chip, which is really being able to shut the country down.